Nisam Bulavinaka and welcome to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. This is your only classic hits radio station in Fiji. Now, Speak Your Mind is live on radio and we do have the delayed coverage shown on FBC TV. That's every Tuesday nights and Wednesday mornings. Now, our guest in the studio today is a lawyer from Fiji's first ever mediation center in Suva. Welcome to Speak Your Mind, Adrian.
Thank you, Louise. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's really a pleasure to have you on the show. But Adrian, maybe we should start off on a more relaxed note. Where were you brought up?
Actually, I grew up in Fiji, in Suva, just up the road from here. In Devore Road, of all places.
Okay, no wonder you look familiar. But yes, where did you go to school or schools?
Well, my primary school was Nehru. I'm half Indian, so I also speak, read and write Hindi, which I was lucky enough to learn at school there. And after that, St. Joseph's High School for a year before I left to go to New Zealand.
So you were in New Zealand probably for quite a while,
15 years, yeah, 15 years in total. I did high school there, university, and then I worked for about 3 or 4 years as well.
So is it good to be back serving in your country?
Well, it's been a long time. I've been away for about 25 years, and I've now been back in Fiji for 7 years. It only feels like a year or so, but it has actually been 7 years. And yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to see everything progressing. Fiji's just moving along in bounds, leaps and bounds. So it's great to be part of that.
And it's great to have you back as well. Now, did you always want to be a lawyer growing up?
Yeah, I think the law kind of chose me in the sense that I'm a talker. That's well known amongst my family and friends.
Okay.
I'm also extremely argumentative, and I fight a lot about a lot of things. So it kind of seemed that I had these natural traits. And also when I was younger, I had some very good role models who were lawyers. My cousin, Imrana Jalal, who I looked up to a lot when I was younger, and it seemed like a glamorous profession to get into, and also, matched all of my attributes.
Yes.
So, so it kind of was on the cards from a very early age.
Well, that's great. Now it's coming back to me when you said that Imrana Jalal's your auntie. Now I remember you as a child, actually. But anyway, moving on, Fijians can now solve disputes and other related issues in a good-natured manner following the setting up of the Fiji Mediation Center in Suva. Now, Fijians now have a choice between mediation and court proceedings when looking at resolving their issues. So, first of all, Adrienne, when did the Mediation Center open?
It was officially launched on the 14th of October last year by the Chief Justice of Fiji, the Honourable Anthony Gates. It's been a project in the making for quite some time. It's a personal, very deep personal interest of his to set up a mediation center in Fiji. A lot of the judges attend courses overseas and seminars and things, and I think he met George Lim from the Singaporean Mediation Center at one of these conferences, thought it was a great idea, and has been working towards importing it into Fiji since then. So it's been a few years in the making, and we finally launched in October last year.
Okay, so why was there a need for a mediation center?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the court system in Fiji is quite overloaded. Surprisingly, we have a lot of cases before the courts. Fijians seem to be very litigious. We seem to want to fight about a lot of things. And there's a huge backlog in the courts, not to mention that you also have a lot of matters before the courts that they're not big matters. They're small matters that could be resolved between the parties if they just had someone to facilitate that. You also have the small claims tribunal system as well. Then you have the magistrates court, the high court system above that. And they're all burdened, heavily burdened with cases. And like I said, the court system is a long process, and some of these things could be resolved outside the courts a lot quicker. So I think the CJ, the Chief Justice, saw the opportunity to bring in a system that's effective and quick and would get a lot of these matters out from the courts.
Right. Very good idea, I must agree. And what does mediation involve, Adrienne?
Well, when you have a dispute between parties, the reason you have a dispute is because those two parties can't reach agreement on their own. So there's something that's blocking them from doing that, maybe their anger, their differences of opinion. In mediation, what happens is you have an independent third-party facilitator who sits between the parties and helps them to communicate with each other, talk with each other about their problems and what potential solutions are. It's a very informal process. It can be over in a day. The parties just basically sit opposite each other and say what they want to say as well. So you get the opportunity to air all of your grievances.
Okay. And well, how many cases have you had so far since opening?
Well,
Around about.
well, we've all had a few each, I think. The panel has 14 mediators on it, and we've all been approached by members of the public to resolve matters for them. So I've had a couple of marital issues. So just separations where you're trying to determine what the separation of assets is and things like that. Others have done employment law issues. The Deputy Registrar of the High Court has also done some family law matters. So we've all had a few, but we're not, I don't think the public is really aware of us yet. So we're not at that flourishing stage, which we hope will come very soon.
Well, I'm sure with Speak Your Mind, this should be a good way of letting people know what you do. Now, like you've said, these sorts of cases that you deal with, which ones are most successful in mediation?
Well, I think once you get the parties to a stage where they can see that this is an effective resolution for them, those are the parties that shift their mindset from the moment that they walk into the door. So when you come to a mediation, you're all angry, you've got an issue, you think you're in the right. If you can sit down during that period of time that the mediation is on for, listen to what the other party has to say and realize that there are two sides to every story. Maybe shift your thinking a little bit during the process. Those are the ones where we have the most success. Often people don't realize that there is a competing viewpoint. When we have a problem with somebody, we always think we're right and that's it.
I know. That's so true. Exactly. But anyway, we'll be back for more on mediation on Gold FM, only the classic hits. The only classic hits radio station in Fiji. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. And we have the pleasure of lawyer Adrienne, who is joining us. And she is a mediator from the Mediation Center in Suva. Now, it's a pretty new thing, right, Adrienne? And, well, maybe you might like to tell us what are the options that the public have in a dispute during mediation?
Yeah, I would agree with that mediation is a very new concept to the public in Fiji. It's something that lawyers sometimes build into our commercial contracts, so we do use it for corporates and commercials. But I think for the general public, this is probably the first time they're hearing about it, and it's a whole new concept for them. The options that people tend to think of when they have a dispute with someone is the first thing you tend to do is, think about going to the police or going to legal aid or finding a lawyer to effect this dispute for you. Mediation's just an alternative to all of those things. Each one of those processes has its pros and cons. So, for example, if you were to take every dispute that there was between everyone to court, life wouldn't be able to carry on. We'd spend most of our time in court, every little argument and fight that we have with someone. So you need a place where you can go to resolve smaller disputes in an effective manner that also leaves the parties on a good footing with each other. So, for example, Fiji is a very small society. You can imagine that if you and I had a dispute, we would definitely run into each other again somewhere, and it could be uncomfortable. And if we went to court and over a matter and there was a judgment in your favor and I was resentful of it, I would be very unhappy to see you in the street. It would make me angry every time I saw you, whereas mediation, the parties actually reach an agreement on their own.
Okay.
And that helps to create better relationships with people. You walk away shaking hands.
Yeah, that's a great example that you've just said, how you meet someone in the street after a court case, hide your face or something like that. But with mediation, it finishes, like you said, on a good note.
Yeah, in the mediations that are successful, the parties come to an agreement between themselves. We don't direct them towards an agreement. All we do is facilitate the process of them talking to each other. So I'll give you a scenario of how it works. In the old days, when people lived in the village or, in their communities, if you had a problem before the legal system was really developed, you would go to the village headman, the Turanganikoro, or the head of your community or your religious leader to resolve the problem for you. And mediation it's the same sort of format. So, for example, if you can take consumer disputes to mediation. You can take tenancy disputes, employment disputes, commercial contracts, pretty much everything, even family matters, you can take to court.
Yeah, and I remember the CEO of the Consumer Council. She was really pushing for this center.
Yeah.
So she must be really happy that it's up and running now.
Yeah. She's Pramila is a huge proponent of the mediation center, and the officers who work at the Consumer Council are also accredited as mediators, and they do a lot of mediation between parties as it is. So if I gave you an example, let's say you bought a toaster from a shop, it didn't work properly, you wanted to take it back, and the shopkeeper refuses to give you your money back or a new toaster. Now you have several options. You can go to the Consumer Council and file a complaint. They'll try and mediate on your behalf. You could go to the Small Claims Tribunal and file a complaint there, and then you're given a date, you have to produce documents, then the parties come, they give each other's point of view, and the adjudicator makes a decision. In mediation, you would both come to the mediation center, select a mediator that you liked the look of, and arrange a date for this meeting. And at this meeting, you would come in, we would listen to what one party has to say about the problem, then we listen to what the other party has to say, and you can say whatever you want to. And this is, it's what we call, it's cathartic. It's helpful for a party to be able to get out their grievances. All that anger that's boiling inside of you, you can say all of that. You can say whatever you want to, as long as you're not rude or offensive.
Abusive.
Yeah, we don't allow that.
Yeah.
But we do allow you to express yourself to the fullest so that you can get that anger out. And you often find once people get that anger out in the open, they're over it.
Yeah.
The problem subsides a great deal at that stage, and then they can see the problem with some clarity.
Yeah, that's easily understood. Getting the anger out. That's very
and that's
important.
something you can't do in court.
Oh,
so that is
okay.
something that you would not be allowed to do at the Small Claims Tribunal. You would not be allowed to do it in court. And so we find that a lot of the court cases, when they end, people still have the anger inside them,
Yeah.
So it's a good option to be able to get all your feelings out on the table. Everybody says what they feel. And when you're sitting opposite the other party and you're forced to listen to their point of view, that's when you learn that there is another side to the story. Or maybe there was a miscommunication. Maybe you didn't understand each other.
Exactly.
And then the mediator will basically point those things out to you. That, look, well, this is your problem. This is the other side. This is what you want. This is what you want. Hey, we can meet in the middle somewhere here. So mediation isn't about winning or losing necessarily. You don't get everything that you want. But you get an outcome that you can live with. And that's the most important thing. That is something that you sometimes don't get out of the court system.
I'm sure it must give you a lot of satisfaction to see someone that you've mediated between and they've left, happy.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a huge supporter of mediation or any form of dispute resolution that doesn't involve aggression, which actually goes against my whole nature and my training as a lawyer. So when you live in Fiji and you see how small society is and how everyone has to get on, and you realize that a small argument with someone can ruin a relationship for a long time, it can interfere with business. You realize that this society is prime for mediation, and it's the best form of outcome, because people can get on afterwards. It's not personal.
Yeah.
If we both had a part in the outcome, and the outcome wasn't imposed on us by a judge, then we're happy with it. And we can
Exactly.
still get on, we can still conduct business, we can move along in life, and that burden, that anger that's in your heart is gone.
I really like that thought of, coming to you as a mediator. I would truly choose you, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's so great. But anyway, we will be back for more on this topic, the Mediation Center. Very interesting on your only classic hits radio station, Gold FM, only the classic hits. This is Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits, and we continue with a very interesting topic here with our friend lawyer Adrienne from the Fiji Mediation Center. But of course, I know Adrienne, you do other work as well. But just picking up from where we left off, how did you become a mediator?
Well, all lawyers have to do courses every year to upskill ourselves, and I did a mediation course a couple of years ago. I was very interested in it. It's not the sort of thing lawyers tend to gravitate towards. We are more used to litigation and aggression, and mediation is sort of the other side of the spectrum. So I did this course. I was really interested in it. It went very well. And then we were invited by the Judicial Department, by the Chief Justice, to attend a course where we could become accredited mediators and be put onto the panel for the first Fiji Mediation Center. So there's a bunch of us who were invited, some private practitioners, which we are, private lawyers, and also people from the Consumer Council, from Commerce Commission, and from the Ministry of Labour as well, and yeah, some judges actually. We've got magistrates, judges, and registrars of the court as well.
That's interesting. Judges even went
Yeah.
and took the course.
Yeah, actually, I think the person who's done the most mediations out of us would be the Master Harry Robinson, who's a Master of the High Court. He's been doing mediations for many years. I think he's probably done more than any of us, and he's fantastic at it.
Okay, so this was new to you as well, because like you said, you used to litigation, arguing for someone's point.
Yeah.
But here it's totally different.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge mind shift for lawyers. I think it's actually a concept that lawyers struggle with. You see, our training teaches us to represent our client to the best of our abilities, and that means going all out, whatever you can do. And when you get into a situation where the other side is pushing against you, you naturally become aggressive.
I would imagine.
It's a fight. It's a fight to win. And of course, we want to win because clients aren't going to come to you afterwards if you lose every time in court. So you want to win, you fight hard to win, and you go all out against the other side. So there's a lot of aggression there.
So this, I reckon, gives you a bit of balance in your life. You've got that one in litigation, and then you've got the mediation side of it.
Yeah, I mean, there are some cases that you will not be able to take to mediation. They have to go to litigation because they're complex, and you need expert witnesses, or the parties just don't agree, or there's large sums of money involved, or, for other reasons, like cases that involve children, for example. This has to be signed off by the family court. We
Okay.
can't, you can take it to mediation, but whatever agreement you make, it has to be signed off by the High Court.
Okay, just one thing, Adrienne. How is mediation rather different to litigation?
Well, just carrying on from what I was saying, litigation is a very aggressive process. It's a very formal process as well. So by the time you get to court on a matter, it can be 2 years. You know, that's what we're sort of looking at the moment, because you have all these documentary procedures. You have to file a claim, the other side gets X amount of days to respond, then you get a time to respond, then you file your client's, you know, statements, and then the court gives you 30 days, and we keep having these mention dates. Every time you have a mention date,
It drags on.
it drags on. You have
Yeah.
to update the court on what's going on, but your client has to turn up, you have to turn up, and it's just updating the court on what the next step is. Then there's more documents, then we have, you know, pre-trial conferences where we meet and we agree on facts and so on and so on and so on. And it's a very complex procedure with a lot of documentation.
And I can imagine also money involved when it drags on. That's another
Exactly.
thing. So with mediation, I mean, it would be best, who do you reckon it would be really best for mediation?
Well, I personally believe that just about any case can be resolved at mediation. It's just the level of mediation that's involved. So you can start with small things like the example I gave you, the toaster and the shopkeeper who doesn't want to exchange it or refund your money, to matters that are worth tens of millions of dollars. Everything depends on the expertise of the mediator
Right.
and the party's willingness to go to mediation and reach a resolution. You know, going back to the whole court system, don't get me wrong, I'm a lawyer, I love the law. I love being in court. I really enjoy it. But it is expensive for clients.
Yeah.
You know, all these processes that we have to go through, the period of time that it takes. For those, let's say, for example, it takes 2 years for a matter to be heard and resolved in court. For that period of time, your matter is unresolved. So you're unhappy for 2 years.
Oh, dear.
You're paying fees for every little thing that a lawyer has to do, every letter they write, every phone call, every email, every appearance in court. You yourself have to turn up for every, you know, mention date or meeting with your client or so on. Your resources are tied up because you're spending money on your fees. Sometimes you have to pay costs into court before the matter can proceed. So, you know, everything's on hold. Basically, your life is on hold until a judge can deliver their judgment.
Yeah.
It's not a satisfactory outcome for a lot of people. Life can't go on.
Yeah. I mean, stressful, if you ask me.
Very stressful. Mediation's the opposite. You know, in mediations, we try to put a 24-hour cap on it so that we can resolve your problem within 1 day. And if we reach an agreement by the end of the day, we draw up a binding agreement as well that the parties can sign at the end of the day, and that's enforceable in court against them.
Yeah, very interesting. But you know, how you are as a mediator, you could or you know, be like a mother or something, or a father,
Yeah.
you know, giving good advice or looking at the problem in the way that you see it, and it's more clearer to you. I mean, can you just give us an example how it is being a mediator?
Well, we're independent parties. We don't take sides and we don't give advice. You know, basically what we do is we help you to talk to each other without ripping each other's heads off. You know?
Okay, just say, for example, if it was a married couple with a child, I mean, how would you deal with that
Well,
sort of
let's
case?
say if they were separating and they wanted to come up with an agreement for a custody agreement and a separation of assets, you know, we would ask, I think in family law cases, mediators do need to have some family law background. That's my
Okay.
personal belief, and I think the family court would agree with that as well. Because it's a very, it's an area of law that's heavily emotional. The interests of the child have to be taken into account, and that's a legal requirement. That's not something we can leave up to the parents on their own.
Okay.
So let's say if you came to a mediator with that problem, we would sit the husband down, the wife down, and ask them, what do each of them want? And where we can, we would try to help them find a balance. So we would say, you know, it's only fair if perhaps you have the child for 3 days of the week and you have the child for 3 days of the week, or maybe 1 week on, 1 week off. It's only fair if the husband's earning more, that perhaps he puts more towards the child's upbringing. And if he has a car and his wife doesn't have a car, maybe he can facilitate the school runs and things like that. So we try to give them practical solutions to a problem. we don't want a legal solution necessarily here. We want a practical solution.
All right, then. Thanks so much, Adrienne. We'll be back for more on Speak Your Mind, Gold FM, only the classic hits. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. This is live on radio, but a delayed coverage shown on FBC TV. That's every Tuesday night and Wednesday mornings. If you're listening, you're interested, you've got something to ask Adrienne, you're most welcome to call 3220-907. If you have a Digicel phone, 77-32907. Now, back into mediation. Could you tell us how much does it cost to have cases solved by the Mediation Center?
Well, at this point in time, we're actually doing mediations for in certain matters for free. There's no charge. We're in the beginning phase of the Mediation Center, and we want people to learn about the service. So we're encouraging them to contact us and bring their problems to us. In general, however, once I think we're up and running, or depending on the more complex matters, the mediators will be setting, we have a schedule of fees that is available to the public. It's not as expensive as litigation, and the mediators can charge anything like an hourly fee, maybe $50 an hour, which is divided between the two parties. It can go up to $100, $150 an hour. It depends on the complexity of the matter. Or we can set a fixed fee for the day. So we can say, all right, if your problem's worth, say, $3,000, we might charge you, say, $300 or $400 to resolve it. That's our fixed fee for the entire mediation.
Oh, that's great. I mean, great option indeed. Like we were saying, that when you go to court, 2 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're looking at
stress.
$300 an hour minimum.
I know.
In fees there. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does a person do in order to have their disputes dealt with?
Well, the Fiji Mediation Center is currently operating out of the judges' meeting rooms at government buildings, and we have a secretary. His name is Vilikesan Gaungao. He's a clerk of the High Court, and if anyone is interested in entering into mediation for any of their disputes, they can contact him, and he will set up an appointment, send out all the information, which is brochures on what we do, how we do it, what the price structure is, and then he'll give them a list of mediators that they can select a mediator from, and then he talks to us about appointing someone. And I'll just give you his phone number if anyone's interested in contacting him. His number is 321-1371. And I believe from March, we will actually be operating out of Goodenough Street.
Okay.
The Justice Department has taken a building here in Goodenough Street, right next to your station.
Oh,
and we'll actually be operating the mediation center out of there. That's where the mediations will take place.
Thank you. Now, this form of dispute resolution process has been proven around the world to be the best when it comes to disagreement between two parties. And, well, I think we've actually covered that, haven't we?
We've talked a lot about the success rate is about 73%.
In the world?
Yeah. Across the board, a lot of the mediation centers those are the figures that are coming out of them. We tend to look at the Singapore Mediation Center the most because that's who we're trained by, and they have a very high success rate. And also, mediation is mandated in Singapore before you can go to court.
Wow.
So obviously, the judicial system has recognized that it's an effective way of reducing the pressure on the judicial system, on the courts,
right,
and for maintaining relationships. I mean, Singapore is, I think smaller than Fiji, actually.
Okay, so that is just perfect, I reckon. Easy on the people who are actually taking mediation and also for the court. So, you win in both sides. Win-win situation.
Definitely. I think one of the examples I gave in that article I wrote for My Life magazine was that legal aid lawyers here have between 180 to 200 cases each on any given day. So that's a lot of pressure for them. How do you
Oh,
deal with
yeah.
that many clients at one time?
I can imagine. And then the backlog. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine all the cases that they have to deal with.
And a lot of those cases don't need to go to court. You know,
Exactly.
there's civil matters that they give civil advice. They don't represent anyone in civil cases. And so, if you're earning under $16,000, you can get free advice from legal aid, but in criminal matters, family law matters, not in civil law matters. And when I say civil law, I mean commercial things. So tenancy disputes, employment law issues, issues with consumer products and things like that. They can give you advice on that. They can't represent you.
Right.
So there is no one at that level, like if you're a low-income earner, there's no one to represent you in these cases, that's provided by the state. So the mediation center is one of those options. The small claims tribunal is one of those options. I have a great deal of admiration for the small claims tribunal process. I happen to think mediation is better because you reach the agreement. The agreement comes from you. We don't impose it on you. So you don't feel unhappy with the outcome.
Right.
You can also, one of the benefits of mediation is that you can customize outcomes. So things that a court could not give you, a mediator can arrange between the two parties. You know, something that's unusual. The court can only go by case law and the laws of Fiji. They can't create a whole new situation that's unique for you, whereas mediation can, because you come up with the solution yourself. So I think it's highly beneficial.
It is, absolutely. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask Adrienne, well, you can call 77-32907 or 322-907. And she is just letting us know about the first mediation center in Fiji. Is that right?
Correct. This is the first one. It's been created by the Judicial Department, so it's a state-sponsored center. It's funded by the state, by the government, and it's heavily supported by the government and the judiciary. Not only do we have the Chief Justice's support, we also have a lot of the judges are on board with this, and there are also private mediation going on with private lawyers. But they're far more expensive.
I know that Fiji Ministry of Labor, they have their own mediation too, don't
Correct,
they?
but that's also a government. Those
That's
are
also
also
government,
mediators. They're trained by the Singapore Mediation Centre at the government's request, and they perform a state function because they represent the state in the dispute. In labour disputes, the mediators there are representing the state's interest between the two parties.
Right.
And, if that doesn't work out, if employment disputes don't work out at that mediation, then you go on to the employment tribunal.
Okay, then. We'll be back for more on Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. This is Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. Thank you for your company. We have a very interesting topic that we're covering here with our friend, lawyer Adrienne, and she is telling us all about, well, it's pretty new in Fiji, mediation, but maybe just tell us how good it is in a nutshell.
Well, the good thing about mediation is that it's quick, so we can be done in a day. There's no papers to be filed and so on. The parties get to express everything they want to. There's, very few boundaries, something that you can't always do in court. It's cost effective, so it's a lot cheaper than going to court, mainly because it's a one-day process, can be over very quickly. It's confidential, so no one needs to know about what's happening in the mediation, what you've decided, who was involved. When you go to court, everything's a matter of public record. Anyone can attend court and listen in. Anyone can see the court records. So you can also keep your dispute very confidential, resolve it, and be out. And, another thing is that It preserves relationships between people. Because you, at the end of the day, we kind of, you come to the agreement between the two of you. You can shake hands on an outcome. That doesn't happen in court. And often with court cases, it's very clear one party wins, one party loses. In mediation, we find a middle ground so that effectively both parties are winning.
Yeah, I mean, really, really good feeling. I can imagine. And I'm sure that most of the people that have come through the doors of the mediation center, they must be really happy.
Well, I think so. To be able to come into a situation in the morning and walk out in the afternoon with a resolution is it's unheard of. It's a great resolution. You don't sleep, you don't lose sleep anymore. It's done, dusted, move on with your life. And I think that makes them happy. It also makes them happy that they're being heard. That's the most important thing to people, is when I have an issue, I want to be heard. And once I've gotten it out and I've been heard, I feel satisfied, So I do think people leave mediation a lot happier than other forms of dispute resolution.
I mean, because just human nature, like you said earlier on, everyone thinks they're right. That's not a good thought to me. I mean, there's always two sides of the story, just how you mentioned, and just to think that you're always right, I never agree with that.
No, well, also, the other thing is, you may feel that you're right, but in the world, you have competing interests. Where you owe someone an obligation, they have a right to that, and vice versa. So even where we think we're right about something, we tend to overlook that the other person has a similar right.
Yeah.
And how do we accommodate both of those rights? You don't live in isolation, so you live with other people around you, and it's about getting on with them.
Right.
And also, I think a lot of times when I sit in court and I listen to the cases going on, I shake my head at the problems that people bring to a courtroom.
I mean, petty problems.
Petty problems.
I mean, it's almost like probably a partner or husband and wife, how they fight over petty issues. And even sometimes it gets really blown up to be a big issue for nothing.
Even in commercial situations like tenants, and landlords, when they fight over things that could be resolved easily between them, and the case ends up costing more than the dispute was worth,
Exactly.
And people often, when they're angry, come to court and they actually don't have the evidence or the cause of action to be there. But they want to push ahead anyway.
That's ridiculous. They go to court when they don't have any evidence.
Yeah.
Instead of coming to the mediation center where everything could be solved in an amicable manner.
Yeah, and we don't, evidence is not a huge component of what we do. Yes, sometimes you have a dispute, say somebody built your driveway for you and didn't build it well, the concrete was, breaking off after a few weeks. Yes, we'll ask you to bring the quote and the receipt and things like that. But we don't ask you to go and look up the law and tell us, well, what is the breach of contract here, and what law has this person broken, and what was the standard of concrete you were supposed to use?
Right.
We address the problem in practical ways. You wanted a driveway built, you built the driveway. So the driveway is not done to spec. How do we fix it? Do you want money, or do you want this person to rebuild the driveway?
Then you get them discussing and then saying, oh, okay, I want this person to do this.
Yeah.
And the other one looks back and says, that could be a possibility.
Yeah. We have private sessions with the clients as well. So you don't have to say everything you think in front of the other person.
Okay.
So we do have private sessions with each of the parties where you can tell us more details. We can get a better feeling for the situation. And then we can guide the two parties, knowing what we know in the background.
Right.
We ask you if you want us to share it with the other party. If you don't, that's fine. There's no problem. But once we have all the information from both sides, we can bring the parties closer together to reaching an agreement.
Yeah, I think this is really good. I mean, for the listener, now this is a great option, going to the Mediation Center in Suva. Where is it again, Adrienne?
It's in Goodenough Street, right here around the corner from FBC. It's going to be in the, I think either this judicial department has taken over this building here, will either be in there or around the corner from it in Kimberley Street.
Okay. Now, there's something else. What other avenues do you have for legal information and representation? What other avenues do you have for the public?
Well, if people are looking for information on their legal rights, that's you pretty much have to go and see a lawyer, or you can go to the Consumer Council if it's a consumer issue. You can go to the Commerce Commission if it's something related to the Commerce Commission. If you have a criminal problem, you can go to Legal Aid. Legal Aid also gives information on, like I said earlier, civil matters, contracts, commercial situations. But we don't actually have a center in Fiji, well, not one that I know of, where you can go and just get general information. And as a lawyer, I find that people stop me in the street a lot or in taxis. Taxi drivers will constantly say, you know, what do you do? Oh, I'm a lawyer. Oh, can I tell you about this problem that I have? And it never ceases to surprise me how little people know about their rights in Fiji.
Yes, that is really true.
And we'd like to help them with that. We want to give legal information out. We want to help. We want to complement legal aid and help people perhaps with information so that they don't get to the litigation stage, so they don't get to the stage where they need to go to court.
Exactly.
So we'll be launching a not-for-profit organization in the next month that will be open to the public. And we'll be giving out all sorts of information that people might need. Business information, employment information, how to write a CV, how to train for interviews, and we'll also be giving out legal information. So if you want to know which entity to go to make a complaint, we can tell you. We can tell you which laws apply to your situation. Most of all, we can tell you if you even have a problem.
Well, that is really good to know. I mean, so important to know your rights. I mean, legal rights where you are protected by a very nice person like Adrienne. But we've come to the end of the show. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
And on Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. We have this live on air on your only classic hits radio station in Fiji. That's every Tuesday after the midday news, and the delayed coverage on FBC TV every Tuesday nights and Wednesday mornings. Vinaka.